I am so excited for the next segment. I said I was excited for Andre and he delivered, but I'm excited for what's going to happen here because we are not speaking just to one, not two, but three incredible women that are changing the game in the sports industry, and they come from a wide variety of spaces. So I'm excited for each of you to be able to see a new path in the different directions that each of our guests have taken. So please welcome Jen Welter, the first female coach in the NFL.
The football playing doctor who can tackle anything.
I love it. We also have Yareliz Ramirez, who's the IT services manager for the Miami Heat.
Thanks, Jay. Excited to be here. Let's go Heat.
Let's go Heat. And finally, we've got Brittany Holterman, who's a former D1 basketball player, a two-time and about to be three-time American Ninja Warrior because she just got the call again. Welcome, Brittany.
Thank you so much for having me, Jay. Super pumped to be here.
I love this Power Pack panel. We've got a PhD, we've got an MBA, we've got a PE, which is a professional engineer, and you've all found a way to pursue your passion within the sports that you love and also throw in some education, some coaching, some math and science behind it. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation with each and every one of you. And I want to start from the beginning. Let's start with a little bit of your background growing up in sports, and then also what types of advice you would have to some of our students that you learned on your journey to being a trailblazer in this sport. Let's start with you, Jen. You were the first coach in the NFL as a female. You've also been on Madden, the first woman in Madden. You've done some pretty incredible things and are inspiring young girls all over the world. What's a little bit of that background and some of those key tips that our students can take when they're trying to blaze trails of their own?
Well, the first thing is, I want to tell y'all, I was never the person that somebody looked at and said, you'll be one of the best players in the world one day. At 5'2", 125 pounds, I heard a lot of what I couldn't, shouldn't, and wouldn't do. And thankfully, the one thing I didn't do was listen. So be so passionate and so good that you follow it, even when you're writing the history and creating the future. Right? Like for me, it was love that drove me in the sport and becoming super competitive to be the best that I could. And realizing if at 5'2" I couldn't outbig anybody, could I outlittle them and outfast them? And then how could I create a unique value proposition in the sport? And that to me was putting my practical experience playing with a PhD that was a master's in sports psychology and a PhD in psychology. So I could not only know how to win the game physically, but win the game within the game, which is the mental game.
That is right on point. I love it. A lot of times we think about what are those barriers that are in our way? What are our weaknesses? If you shift that focus a little over to the strengths that you do have, we all have certain strengths, you can keep pushing forward, follow that passion, and only listen to that advice that empowers you and nothing that tries to stop you from reaching your dreams. Yeah, you've got some pretty awesome trailblazing in the world of inside, behind the team, behind the scenes. So how did that journey come about, and what are some of the things that you've learned about trying to make it as a woman within the organization itself and helping it run?
Yeah, so funny enough, I didn't have any real professional experience outside of like high school sports. So I didn't go to college and play sports. I didn't do much in the athletic space at all past high school. And so that I ended up in sports was kind of just one of the things where it came to me, and then I knew it was right when I got the opportunity. And so the mesh of sports and IT really came together beautifully for me because I was actually getting my undergrad in business analytics, actually. And when I was, going through the, undergrad and trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to do, I had zero clue, no idea. So if you're out there and you have no idea what you want to do, join the club. So what had happened was that, the opportunity to work in sports had presented itself in my last semester of undergrad. I think it was probably like months in even. So I had no internships. I had I felt no real professional experience. And so when that opportunity presented itself, it's like a bulb went off and I was like, oh, like that would be fun. That would be a fun way to still do what I'm doing in terms of business and mesh my love for sports, which is just purely because it's just fun. And so I guess my advice to those who are younger and trying to figure out how you get into the sports world is that you don't have to have any sports experience. Sometimes it's actually better with a fresh perspective to come into the space that not used to doing things, traditionally. So if you have a love for just the game and the idea of being in sports, there's definitely an opportunity out there for you, and you should definitely go for it.
I love that. I love that you tied it to fun, whether that's passion, whether that's just the excitement and the enjoyment. Students out there, the skills that you're learning in first are going to allow you to accomplish so many different types of things. The key in your success is to tie it to the things that you love the most. So find that connection to fun, find that connection to helping people, whatever it is that you're most passionate about is going to take you into some really cool places. And I'm glad you were able to find that. Britt, how about you? You've played in a wide variety of sports. You changed your sport from basketball to American Ninja Warrior. You're an absolute beast. I've watched you compete, and it's a lot of fun. What are some of the tips that you've gained along that path and making it to the higher levels in both of these sports, and any kind of roadblocks and barriers that you were able to overcome as a trailblazer in your industry?
Thanks, Jay. So being a woman in engineering is, it's interesting. I was one of maybe 4 or 5 women at the University of Dayton in the engineering program. But my history in sports kind of set me up for that because I was constantly playing with all of the guys. So that gave me the confidence to really, raise my hand in class. And I think my biggest piece of advice to girls and young women out there is to just let your light shine. I know it's a lot easier for boys and guys to raise their hand and to be outspoken. And a lot of times the girls don't say quite as much. And I'm hoping that that's changing. But I know, when I was growing up, that's kind of how it was. So, my biggest piece of advice is just be confident, figure out who you are, and just love yourself. And I am a gay female, obviously. And for the first 5 years of working in a male-dominated industry, engineering, I kept that secret. And it was hard for me to go to work every day. And once I was able to let that out, I got immensely better at engineering just because I felt more comfortable in my skin. And I picked up Ninja about 4 years ago. So I'm this 30-year-old former Division I basketball playing engineer, 6 feet tall. I have the opposite problem as Dr. Jen. I am now the tallest ninja there is. And just trying to use engineering to figure out, okay, I kind of look like that guy over there. How is he doing a certain obstacle? Because he's 6 feet tall also. And just trying to figure out all those physics. And I mean, movement is science. And using all of that engineering, it's all connected. Like Andre said, you don't have to pick one in particular thing that you're going to do for the rest of your life. Take it from me, take it from everyone on this panel. You can start as a tall, lanky basketball player and end up being alongside 5-foot gymnasts, and somehow you can make it work.
I love that. I mean, one, thank you for sharing that story of how you were able to kind of empower yourself. And when you shared your story, take it to the next level. And so I think that's important for students to understand from both sides. If you are struggling with that, it's something that can be empowering. And then also we're making sure that we're creating inclusive environments where people feel like they can bring their full self to work, whether that's on our teams or when we go off into industry and create environments for people that they can feel like they can show up as their full self is extremely important. And then also the balancing act. I know you're a mom, you're a gym owner, you're an athlete, you're an engineer, you do all of these absolutely incredible things. And I know you have a big passion for each one of those. So Thank you each for sharing that. I think it's so important for our students to be able to hear it from you and understand that those are certain things that they're not the only ones that are facing, and that you guys were able to overcome those challenges and do absolutely incredible things. Students, keep throwing your questions into the chat. We are going to take questions from the chat for our incredible panel here again. But next, I want to go back to Yaya and ask you a little bit about the STEM and science behind the Heat, or behind the basketball industry, that people might not be that aware of. And you mentioned that you kind of just found it later in your college career. But what are some of those areas where we just might not really expect there to be science, and there's a lot of it?
Yeah, it's funny. I dug into my resources at the Heat to get this answer. So shout out to Andy, my colleague, who introduced me to this tool that we were using that I was actually totally unaware of until recently. In its second spectrum, which I'm sure that if you're familiar with analytics, basketball, and the game, and the NBA, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you don't, it blew my mind, and it'll blow yours as well. Basically, this tool is used to ingest like video, like live video, recorded video of the game, and it uses machine learning and AI to learn like anything from the player to the team to the game itself. So it's really insane. I was blown away when I heard that. I was like, what? We're doing that? And they're a partner of the NBA. So and you can see all about it online. It's really, really cool. And it's, I think, right up the alley of the audience here. Like, it is a little bit of everything. And there's definitely lots of opportunity there. Andre touched on it a little bit. This is only going to get bigger and bigger. So if you're looking into the analytics, machine learning, AI space, there is huge opportunity in professional sports, and the NBA, being as a forward-moving league as it is, it's going to be a really great space to be in.
I love that. They're just so powerful, and it just shows another avenue in which there's so much science and tech in the sports that a lot of our students love, but maybe don't see these connections. And not only just because it's cool, but it's giving kind of franchises an edge. And they're going to want that talent just as much as they want the talent that's on the court. So let's go to Brittany. Same question, but then also we have a question in the chat that ties along to it. And do you use any data or analysis to train for American Ninja Warrior? So if your answer was different than that, let's toss some of that in there too. But what are you thinking in terms of the audience might not be as aware of in your sport?
Yeah, so all of the obstacles involve physics. And it's just a matter of how tall or how short or how much do you weigh, how much body mass, how much muscle mass to get from one side to the other. So science is everywhere. We don't have a chance on the show to practice the obstacles. So what we're doing is a couple hours before we have to run, the producers are taking us through and just showing us the obstacles. But the people who do really well on American Ninja Warrior are the engineers, the ones who are counting steps in between monkey bars, in between obstacles. They're using their hands to figure out how tall something is, how wide something is. And so as they're talking through those rules, we get one person, one tester shows us the obstacle. So as that person's going through the obstacle, some of my favorite things I've seen other ninjas do is like count, like almost like they don't have a timer. Well, some of them actually do have a timer. So they're figuring out how long they have until, the ring drops or something like that, so that when they go back in the warm-up area, they can walk through these obstacles without actually having to touch the obstacle, but they're visualizing every single thing that goes through there. So as a basketball player, yes, there's absolutely physics involved with the arc and the stats, and there's a lot of math. But in Ninja Warrior, there's a lot of physics. It's really cool to put those two worlds together.
I love it. So instead of going to a ninja gym, your first step should be to understand a little bit of the physics, and that's what might help you to get to stage 4 and get to the top of Mount Midoriyama. I've seen it, and just how you can be more efficient on a course. or even all the design that goes into creating the course in the first place. There's a whole engineering crew that designs these obstacles, that puts them together in the stadium, does all kinds of testing and adjustments to make sure that they get the right show that we all end up seeing at the end. So that's so cool to be able to put that all together. And then let's go to Jen. Also, we've got a lot of good questions in the chat to tie to this specific question too. So same question to you, but also the people in the chat want to know, what tools and data did you use to enhance your personal performance or your team's performance in there? So if your question, or if your initial answer was different, share that with us. And then can you add on any data that you used as a coach or as a player to improve your performance? I know you mentioned you were only 5'2" and you had to find every advantage you could. Was science some of that?
Okay, so first of all, if you guys didn't know this, I am the ultimate student athlete, right? A student of the game in every sense of the word. And I think data is one of the coolest things that you can be really good on. I was on the math team in high school, and I always loved to find how things put together, right? I say I'm a great dot connector. So my dissertation, and I'm going to go a little bit different. My dissertation was actually on the NFL's use of the Wonderlic in player selection. Okay. So there's data even in combine, there's data in selection, there's down and distance data, like what do other teams do if we're in this situation versus this one? And so on defense, how are we going to match up against it? What do they do in these formations? And then you even look at, how can you say from a physics perspective, somebody at 5'2", how do you take down someone who's 6'10"? And that's by being really low. So there's tons of data. Numbers are everywhere in the game. But one of the coolest things I learned when I was writing my dissertation is, do you know how the Dallas Cowboys actually became known as America's team?
It's a good question. I've actually wondered that before. What is that? Why is it?
All right. So for all of you who like data, the Dallas Cowboys actually used to be known as America's computer team because they were the first ones to bring analytics to football, right? Back in the Landry era, they were the ones who first really put data to like down and distance, and they put it to, how to draft people and, do all of those things. So they were so good at it that a lot of the people just, it's a copycat league. So they started doing everything that the Cowboys were doing, and eventually they just went with America's team, but it was actually America's computer team first. And I just have a cool one. So if you are a really data person, one of my really good friends, Brittany Donaldson, who coaches for the Toronto Raptors, probably got into coaching in an even cooler way than I did. And she was a former player whose career was ended because of injury, but she was in data and analytics in the Raptors front office and was so good there that she eventually transitioned to the coaching staff because she was really good at taking the data and helping the coaches use it like real time and build it in. So just kind of a cool way on how like your data in sports knowledge can actually not only work for the coaching staff, but might be your advantage as a coach as well.
I absolutely love that as well too. Now I know the answer to the America's team thing, which is great. And I know they had some pretty good years back then, pretty incredible franchise at that time. So it's great to see that it was math and science that helped lead to that success. One thing that we keep seeing in the chat that is really important is, what advice do you have for young girls that don't see themselves represented in a field they have a passion for? And I want to start with you, Jim, because I know the story of how you got into Madden is pretty cool, and what that means for representation for young girls and in the world of not just sports and STEM, but even esports, in these different areas where they are underrepresented and don't always see themselves. So can you give us some insight on that story, and then also any of those tips that you have for them so they can continue to pursue that passion?
Yeah, I sure can. And trust me, I feel it to the core of my being on how hard it is to dream if you don't see somebody who looks like you. Even though I had, 4 Super Bowls and 2 gold medals with the first and second Team USA, and a PhD. And by the way, was coaching coaches. Okay, that was my business, coaching coaches on like feedback and coach athlete relationships. I never imagined that I could coach football because there were no women who I could look at who were coaching at the pro level. So I instinctively, when I was offered my first position by former Dallas Cowboy Wendell Davis, said no. And thankfully, Wendell said, not a lot of guys are going to give you this opportunity. You're taking this job, and took the job on my behalf and said I couldn't quit. Right? So we need allies, okay, first of all. And if you are that person in that life, be the one who sees something in someone else before they even see it in myself or in yourself or in their selves, right? But then one of the really cool things is, you know, I realized though we may not be able to change the world as fast as we'd like, right? Like I would like a female head coach right now, but we don't have one. So if we can't change it in the real world, we can change it in the virtual world, in the esports world, in the gaming world, which actually has the same permission and socialization value as like seeing someone in the sidelines. I always say football has suffered from sins of omission. You don't have to tell a girl she doesn't belong there. It's reinforced in everywhere that she isn't. But with Madden, right, there had never been a female coach in Madden before. And yet I may not be the head coach in the NFL, but I am a head coach in Madden. And that is really neat because it has a couple of really important things. One, it normalizes seeing a female as a coach, right? It would be so shocking to show up and have a female as a coach, you know, say for your high school team or your flag team or your NFL team, if you've already played with Coach Jen and Team Shutdown and you know that we have the best defense in Madden, right? So it socializes it, makes it more normal for the guys. And then for the girls, it gives them permission to say, that's really cool and I could do that. So I think that we have to change the narratives and the storytelling around not just the world as it is, but the world that we want to see. And esports and the virtual space is a space where we can, you know, kind of instigate that change so that the real world will catch up with what we already know, which is, you know, girls can be great coaches just like boys can. Women can be great additions to an NFL staff and all of those things. So think about in your space, in your influence, where we can change the conversations so we give more people permission to see someone that looks like them.
I absolutely love your thought process behind that. I think it's so important. Even like when you think of games and choosing your character, you want to choose a character that reflects who you think you want to be. And I think that's an area where we can all start working on. And I really love what you added in there about the allies. Let's make sure that we're looking around our organizations and asking that question. Why doesn't this organization look like the community that we serve and that we inspire? And what can we do to help open some of those doors and break down some of those barriers? But yeah, you nailed it. And let's reverse engineer some of that path and get people there. Britt, I want to go to you and in your kind of respected fields. You've been in multiple fields where you may have been underrepresented and from multiple angles of who you are as a person. What are your thoughts on that in terms of how do we grow equity and representation and how do we continue to change that in the industries?
I think it comes down to us being us. Jen, I love the ally suggestion. That's so important to have people as allies. And I think for me, I was actually the only female at my engineering firm. I was also the only gay person at my engineering firm. So I hid it. And again, it wasn't until I came out that I felt more comfortable. And my hope in telling you all this and the way that I live my life now is that I can be somebody that somebody can look at and say, well, she did it, and she's a gay female. And honestly, I think that the world has made so many strides in even the last 10 years for both women and LGBTQ. It's amazing. And I think it just comes down to people being okay with who they are so that we can be represented in that field. For a woman, it's obviously like, let's talk about the vice president. How freaking cool is it that we have a female vice president? Now children across the world can look at that and be like, I could do that. And a person of color as the vice president. That's amazing. And on a super small scale, for me to be a gay engineer, I hope that kids can look up to me and say, I can do that. I aspire to be that. And Jen, it is so cool that you are in the NFL. I mean, you're talking about what you said about omission. It's just, I've never seen a woman in the NFL. So obviously, like, why would I even think that I could do that? But now that is changing.
Right.
How
No,
cool watching. Well, yes, but like how cool watching the Super Bowl and seeing NFL female refs and female coaches. And it's so invigorating. I'm like getting excited about it, and just, we got to keep the ball rolling and keep advancing and keep showing people that we're here.
I love it. And I love you. You're one of my favorite people. You know that, but also your wife is one of my favorite people in the world. So I'm so glad that is there, and you guys are wonderful. And it just makes the world, it makes me smile. Right. And I'm glad that we've seen tons of progress, but there's so much more that we need to do. Thank you, each one of you for representing and leading, but let's make sure that we're all doing our parts to make this world more inclusive and allowing people to be the best versions of themselves. Yareliz, anything you want to add from your perspective and your experiences as a Puerto Rican female in the industry? Let me know what your experience has been.
Yeah, I know that the question was like, what for the students in the audience who, what do they do if they don't see themselves in a space that they're very passionate about? My advice to you is that the reason that you don't see anybody there is because they're waiting for you. You are going to be that person in that space. So don't be afraid to be the first, the only. You don't see that as an advantage, but it really truly is, because when you do see, like, think about kind of what Brittany was saying about seeing the first female VP, like now it opens the floodgates of like, wow, that could be me. So perhaps you are that for someone, and don't be afraid of, don't be intimidated by taking on that feat. There's going to be lots of ups and downs and tough times and great times, and all of it is definitely part of the ride, and something that it makes definitely life a little bit more fun, and it's something that you should be up to the challenge. And with that also, I always tell people when I speak to young, college students, high school students who are looking to get their foots in the door and get some experience in the field, it's important to definitely have people who are going to advocate for you. But what I like to stress that I don't feel like it's talked about enough is that you have to be your own biggest advocate. Like when you have your list of advocates, you have, your parents, your best friend, a teacher, a professor, an old boss, all these people, you have to be number one. Because if you don't feel like you can do it, there doesn't matter how many people are telling you can. You have to first look at yourself and be like, I can do this. I'm meant for this. I'm meant to be here. I worked hard. I deserve to be here. And so, yeah, that's my biggest advice. If you have to write it on a sticky note, I'm my number one advocate, and remind yourself every day. That's definitely going to get you, wherever you want to be a lot quicker.
I love that. Let's open up all the floodgates. If you want to win 7 Super Bowls, go win 7 Super Bowls. It doesn't matter if no one's done that before, right? We've just got a couple minutes left. So really quick, each one of you, I want to get our students one more awesome idea for their innovation challenges. So if there's one area, one magic wand that you could have to help innovate your sport, can you give me a quick 30 seconds on what you would want that to be? Let's go back to you, Yaya, to start.
Yeah, so I'm going to come more from the fan experience point. So something a little bit out of what we usually talk about. I actually went to my mentor, Anna Glass, shout out to her for this idea. We have our premium seats have bands, and based on the color, it shows like what sections you're supposed to be in. It's a pain to obviously distribute them, make sure that people keep them on, etc. So if there's some way to know who's supposed to be in what section without it being a physical aspect and not on the cell phone either, that would be very cool. Happy to talk more about that if you have any ideas.
I love that. If you have ideas, shoot them our way so that we can get that in front of the heat. Jen, what are you thinking? What do you want to see in changing the game in your arena?
Well, there's kind of two. I really want to see the gamification of like learning your playbook and studying opponents, right? I want us to be able to go in and like input my playbook in, you know, like if I was going to go play Madden, so that you're actually playing games, but you're doing work too. Because there's so much you can learn from the video component, but from a processing standpoint, if we can make it fun for you to learn your playbook, I think our teams are going to be that much better. So I want to see playbook games. And then I would also really like to see a female flag video game version. I think it should be Gridiron Girls. That's the brand I've built. So if anybody's got that gaming acumen, let's go.
All right, awesome. So if you want to create a game, shoot it over to Jen. Brittany, what are you thinking?
I have two quick ones also. So American Ninja Warrior does an obstacle challenge. So a few, the Wingnuts and Deja Vu have been actually submitted from people. So first of all, create an awesome obstacle that then I get to run through and give me all the beta on it too. Second one would be some sort of virtual reality so that ninjas can warm up appropriately depending on what obstacles there are. So you can input the obstacle, you can throw on some goggles, and you can actually feel yourself going through those obstacles so you can really get ready for it.
Okay. I love both of those. And let's kick it up a notch. If there's a really good idea for an obstacle, would you be down to put that in your gym? If it fits, obviously?
Yes. Absolutely.
All right. So not only are you going to submit it to Ninja Warrior, we're going to submit it to Brittany to see if she'll put it in her gym. And we've had Michelle Warnke on the show before. Maybe she'll put it in her gym. A lot of great opportunities for you all to bring that together. Jen, sorry, did you have one last thought on that one?
I was going to say that would be a great thing to pair with visualization for your warm up.
Yes.
Totally.
I love it. And so that could apply not just to Ninja, but any sport, and just making sure that you can visualize the right ways to get your body ready for what you're about to put it through. So thank you, all three of you, so much from the bottom of my heart. This was absolutely so much fun, so cool, such great ideas. And the things that you guys are doing are absolutely incredible. My wife and I are going to adopt, so we know for sure that I'm going to be a girl dad. And I'm just so happy that there's people like you that are doing incredible things to pave the ways. And we've come so far, but we have so much more to go. And I'm so happy that you guys are part of this journey, and now you're part of the First Family. So once we're back to in-person events, we're definitely going to have you guys back. And I'm just so grateful for everything you did. Thank you all.